And the first roundtable will look at the recruitment challenges that health tech startups face when they want to sustain their growth. And we will be very fortunate to have 4 panelists with us today. At 9:20, so Anaïs Le Corvec, we will have John Bethell, we have Rowan, Gardner, and Stephan Christgau. We're very glad to have assembled a nice panel that Anaïs Le Corvec, as moderator, will then introduce to you. Again, please use the chat to introduce yourself, to exchange with the other participants, and ask your questions in the questions tab all along the panel, and then I will take them and redirect them to the speakers at the end of the session. So Anaïs, now as moderator, I now leave the floor to you to introduce the other panelists.
My name is Anaïs Le Corvec. I'm the network manager of the Council of European BioRegions. I am very glad to be here today. I wish I was there in person. But anyway, we'll do a nice panel, I'm sure, with my key panelists today. So we have with us Rowan Gardner. She's a serial entrepreneur. She's been very active in the field. She will introduce herself, if it's okay, in every question, because I think it's the best way people introduce. Then we have John Bethell. He's the CEO of lucabio. He's a talent acquisition specialist. Then we have Stephan Christgau. He's the managing partner of EIT Venture. I'm not sure if I say correctly, I hope. A life science investor with a long experience. So basically the panel is really about giving us some great insights on the current challenges and potential solutions around the talent bottleneck in life science. So basically, talent health is key. For us in the clusters, this is something that our cluster managers and members sometimes have struggled with for their companies to find great talent. And especially now in the post-pandemic with the phenomenon of the great resignation, we are all striving for finding great talents. So in this roundtable, as I said, we will look at the challenges, the potential solutions from the experience of our 3 great speakers. So I will not speak more, hopefully, and I will ask maybe Rowan the first question, if it's okay for you, although I just cannot see her on screen right now. I hope, Rowan, you can hear us. So my question is, first of all, if it's okay for you to introduce yourself just shortly, and then answer the following question. So based on your great experience as a serial entrepreneur, what are the main challenges you have faced in terms of finding and keeping the right talent?
So good morning, everyone, and thank you, Anaïs, and delighted to be speaking. I am a serial entrepreneur. You can see my camera does not do me any favors. You can see a lot of great hair, and I have been working in the field of applying data analytics to life science problems for the last 30 years. So going all the way back into the previous century and using computers to inform our understanding of disease biology. My most latest venture is PrecisionLife. We're a population analytics business, and we're bringing more insight from biological data to understand disease biology. And we're working with pharmaceutical companies and healthcare organizations to improve healthcare delivery and also find novel drug discovery targets. We have offices in the UK, in Copenhagen, and in Warsaw, and Boston. So I think the first say, different countries have different cultures, different recruitment processes, expectations, and we are one of our biggest problems really finding sufficient people of a high caliber and a diversity of talent. So diversity is really important because health is complex, and bringing diverse perspectives to solving problems is known to help with finding success. So I think what are our challenges? Not enough. And then, of course, once you have excellent people, you really want to retain them. And I think retention for us is a huge priority in our business. So we work hard on having a culture, particularly as we work across multiple offices. I think that's a talent we've all had to learn during the pandemic, as we've all been not in our formal work environments, but culture and giving our employees a sense of what the development potential is in their organization. So I'll allow my colleagues to add their views. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rowan. I think that's very helpful. Okay, so I'll pass it on to John. So the same, I will ask you if you can just to quickly introduce yourself better than I did. And my question for you is, since you startup and companies come to you to actually find the right talent, so what challenges do you actually face to find them?
Well, yeah, so by way of introduction, my name is John Bethell. I'm the CEO of lucabio. We're a company that was set up about 2 years ago specifically to address the recruitment challenges that life sciences startups in Europe face. It seemed to be a clear niche. I worked before in a equity crowdfunding business and spoke to a lot of founders, and I'd always ask them what their issues were, and recruitment seemed to be front and foremost quite often. So yeah, we set up this business to try and address that. In terms of challenges in finding talent, we've sort of parachuted into this industry at a very interesting time. I think one of our strategic trigger points for joining the industry was it was very clear that life sciences was going to be a really hot sector in the 2020s. It was growing anyway, and then within 6 months, in fact less, I think within 4 months of us founding the business, COVID hit and changed up everything. And I think that would be certainly one of the sort of significant factors in terms of how recruitment has changed for this industry. First of all, it thrust life sciences very much front and center into the the worldview as a hot topic, and we've seen that in terms of the number of new startups coming onto the scene, the rate of change of innovation, and the amount of funds coming into this sector. So that's obviously a good thing, but one of the problems with fast-growing sectors is that it creates demand, and supply, particularly in terms of highly skilled talent, doesn't often keep pace with that, and we're certainly starting to see that. In terms of the logistics of recruitment for our clients, I mean, the Zoom factor is a really major one. We haven't been able to get out and meet our clients face to face to build a relationship just to get the project going. They've not been able to meet their candidates face to face, and often having to hire and start working with people without ever having had that sort of more intimate relationship of meeting, shaking hands, getting to know each other. And that's definitely creating a lot of issues around the logistics. Things that used to take 2 to 3 weeks in terms of first, second, third interviews, or sometimes people would fly in and meet everyone in the team, and that would be it. These days, that process gets a bit spaghettified. It can take 5 to 6 weeks as individual Zoom calls are set up. And one thing that I know from recruitment over the years is that speed is of the essence. Recruitment is a process that works best when it's moved swiftly. So that's being interrupted. Another factor that is quite clear when there's a talent shortage is that candidates have the power. I'm not sure that particularly new and experienced leaders and startups actually recognize that factor. They're sort of interviewing as if, obviously you do have to screen people and you want to choose the best, but there's always going to be an element of you're having to sell to them as well, because candidates have options. Certainly, one of the things we've really noticed in the last sort of 12 months is the is the sort of burgeoning of desire to fold software, AI, and machine learning into everything that companies do. There's this sort of big melding of science. The way I describe it is, bio meets tech, basically. And the challenge with that is that demand is now, but it actually takes years to build up those sort of skills. Similarly with scientific lab type skills, you takes years of undergraduate and then PhD, but companies are just popping up at the moment that suddenly have a need for certain skill sets that just either don't exist in the market, or they're certainly not there in the volume that you really need to sort of supply the entire startup ecosystem. Just sort of touch on a couple of other sort of challenges that we're seeing more at the back end of this year. Actually, it wasn't so much of a problem last year, but we're finding that increasingly people are now reluctant to relocate. I think what's happened is that in the earlier stages of COVID, people were prepared to sort of overcome those challenges. But as we're sort of facing down another winter of potential lockdowns, people are much more reticent about moving away from friends and family and that which is familiar. So we're really starting to see people say, no, I'm not moving to another part of the world to take up a job. And that is putting pressure on startups and all employers really to have to seriously consider remote employment as an option. And obviously, if you've got to be in a lab, or if you need to physically be together as a team all the time, that's just not going to work. So it's putting sort of additional pressure on the concept that this is a global market and you can tap into candidates from anywhere in the world. That seems to be less the case at the moment, and I don't know whether that will return to norm when COVID truly subsides, or whether there's a sort of a much more sort of significant expectation on candidates' parts that they should be allowed to work remotely. And this is obviously part of the Great Resignation as well, which you touched on. So I think that's probably the synopsis of our experience. So I might pass that back to you, Anaïs. So thanks for the introduction.
Thank you so much. That's quite a nice overview. Thanks a lot. So I will then now ask a question to Stephan. The same, if you can just briefly introduce yourself. And then my question is, from a VC point of view, what are the key turnoffs when you check out the teams before you actually invest? Or what do you look at in terms of teams' talents before investing? Thank you.
Thank you, Anaïs, and thank you for the invitation to be here this morning. So by way of introduction, I am a life science investor. I've been doing life science investing for about 15 years. Originally, I was part of setting up Novo Seeds, which is an early stage investment arm of Novo Holdings. And then I left Novo about 2 years ago and joined my new colleagues and was part of launching EIT Ventures. We are a new Scandinavian-based life science venture fund. We focus on therapeutic biotech companies, and we have our base here in Scandinavia, but we invest across Europe and the US. And so the question of what do we focus on, you can look at the life of the biotech companies from the very, very early inception to the mature stage where the company have several programs and in clinical development. And of course, the requirement with regard to expertise and talent sort of develops along the way. Also, the management is likely to be remodeled as the company develops. As a life science investors, I've worked a lot in the early stages, but I've also worked in later stage financing, and it's the same we do here in EIT Ventures. And so it is a cliche maybe, but it's very true. Life science investing is or first and foremost, also a people business. We look very much into the teams, meaning that we want to see the teams have the correct sort of balance between sort of scientific acumen, the get stuff done deal gene has to be expressed, and an understanding of what it takes, as well as a certain sort of, I won't call it humbleness, but an ability sort of to interact with other experts and stakeholders and understand what they where they need help from other people. And in the beginning, a biotech company may have a few people. So a team here should be understood in not only the CEO and the 1 or 2 employees that may be at their beginning, but also the founders, the scientific experts. And then as the company gradually grows, the internal team of the biotech companies become bigger, more expertise will be recruited. But there are still stakeholders around the company, and it's still important when you look at the company to see its ability to sort of attract talent wherever that may be, in whatever form makes sense for the particular company. In this context, we look also at the diversity of the team and the expertise. Diversity understood in the broadest possible way, meaning that if you have I can say this because I'm an engineer myself, but if you have 4 male bald engineers in a company with the same education and the same sort of experience background, well, maybe you're missing something out. Maybe that doesn't give you access to all the insights and skills and experiences that is needed to develop the program in the most efficient way. So we are looking at teams that sort of is able to have talent or people who supplement each other with different expertise. And this is diversity on the experience level. It's also on the personal level. So we actually are happy that in our ventures, we just the other day did a review of our portfolio, and it turns out half of our CEOs are female, which is not something we've sort of invested with that purpose, but it's nevertheless good to see that we have a sort of a balance on that parameter. But this is only one parameter. We're talking about diversity here in many parameters. So this is important. So if I should sort of summarize, then we're looking for an experienced team and a balanced team with a sort of full as many areas of expertise covered as possible. And then we accept that in the early stage companies, you can't have everything. There will be small teams, and this is fine. Any company will start from some place, but then you have to be aware of which areas of expertise you want to expand, where is your weakness, where's your strength, and then talk with us, and we're likely to see the same. And we can accept that you start from the base where you are, but then have a plan for how you're going to engage those competencies that you need to build the program and the company to where you want to build it.
Great. Thank you so much, Stephan. So I'm happy to understand that a bold woman like me then have a place also in the
Definitely.
So I will recover my hair sometime in the next month, I guess. But anyways, many thanks for this insight. I think it's great actually to go to my second round of question now, because facing the challenge, I'm sure there are some key solutions. So I would like to ask Rowan, especially because you actually did mention that retention of the talent is part of your strategy. So what would be, based on your great experience, some key recommendation that you'd make to entrepreneurs to start up, and also to for us clusters or for a foundation like WorkInHealth, what can we do to educate these talents, but also to the entrepreneurs? What are some key recommendations to overcome the talent bottlenecks and to keep the talent in-house?
So, yeah, I think as we just heard from the other speakers, this is a multi-faceted challenge that all companies have to solve if they're to grow successfully. And I think one of the things that is really important to bear in mind as a business is that you have to be worthy of great talent. So John's point about, this is a competitive market, you have to sell to candidates in order to attract them. It goes beyond that, because once a talented person has committed to join your business, you want to keep them, right? It costs money to recruit, it costs time, it costs a lot of other effort in the organization to bring someone into your business and pull them into the team. So, once they're there, you want them to find great satisfaction and enjoyment in their work, because that is what will help them stick in your organization. And so, at PrecisionLife, we really think about our values and our culture in the organization. I think, there's a comment that culture trumps strategy for breakfast. So that kind of slightly intangible DNA that runs through businesses, that is a set of common principles that those in the organization want to be part of and stand by in what they do, is really important, and making that explicit so that everyone understands what's expected of them and how we will approach the way we work. And that makes people proud of working for an organization. It's something that they want to be part of. So I think those aspects are critically important. And then and I think that's at a sort of group level across the company. And then there is the sort of individual axis of giving those in your organization a sense of how they can develop. The wonderful thing of working in a startup, as opposed to a much larger organization, is there's a much stronger relationship between the work you do every day and the progress that a business makes. You can see it, and within the business, we want to celebrate that for our employees. And the point that Stephan made, that you start with fairly small teams. Not everyone can be a manager or have a long job title, but you want to develop the sense of ownership and responsibility for delivery within the organization. And in the past, we've done various things in our businesses to give people an early sense of what it is to lead a program and be responsible for development. So, particularly those who are in sort of my part of biotech, what did John say? When bio meets tech, the computational companies. I think the phrase now is tech, John. So when the tech meets the bio, but whichever way around it is. In our agile approaches, where we have our teams working, we will rotate them as sprints, so that you have within one team, one of the group is the leader for that sprint. And then once it's completed, they'll drop back into the team and we'll bring someone else forward. And what that does is it gives everyone in the organization appreciation of the challenges of leading, and you work together with colleagues to solve problems together. And that's worked really well for us in organizations, in binding teams together and kind of getting a sense that, we're all prepared to, well, I think the language is a little bit Silicon Valley and a bit dramatic, but die on the hill for each other, really embrace the challenges ahead of us and work together to solve them. So I think that's a little insight, if that's helpful from my background.
That is definitely very, very helpful. I think that's a great way to actually build up teams. So next, John, based on what you said before, which I think is quite interesting, what would be, let's say, your best piece of advice on the best way to find and keep talent? And also, I just wanted to ask, because you said, and now Rowan also mentioned it, when tech meets bio, because it's true that sometimes it seems like life science is not, or people that study technology are not necessarily the first it's a sector they will go to try to find a job. It's not necessarily life science. So how do we make our sector also attractive? And I'm sure when you find candidates, you find from other areas, you know, how do you make our sector more attractive to them?
Well, there's, I mean, it's such a massive topic, and I think that's going to be covered later on today. In fact, it's probably the underlying theme of the whole day is, you know, how do we bring people to life sciences as opposed to, you know, insurtech or fintech or any other sector, or, you know, clean tech or any of the other sort of sectors that are vying for those attentions. And, you know, when you're looking at some of those tech skills, they're very much more transferable, right? I mean, you know, if you're in AI or machine learning, you can really pick and choose which sector you want to go and work in. Whereas if you've trained as a molecular biologist, you're kind of, particularly from a technical perspective, you're probably going down that path at some point. And I guess, you know, so obviously as a recruiter, I'm sort of going to come at this maybe from a bit more of a pragmatic perspective. You know, Stephan has described, you know, very articulately what an investor wants to see, and I think everyone should pay attention to that because they're all going to want some investment at some point. And Rowan has very clearly described her, you know, internal journey in terms of, you know, learnings and how she wants to build a business and what she wants to see in it. I'm always delighted when people bring culture to the front end of the conversation, because you know, it really tells me that they're going to care about their people and think about and give them a priority. But so if I can sort of start with, you know, one cliche that I've known over the last 20 years in any sector I've worked in is there's definitely a war for talent, and I think people need to understand that and think of themselves as potentially on a war footing as far as that's concerned, because you're really, you know, it's a scarce resource. You're going to have to compete with corporates, you're going to have to compete with your competitors, you're going to have to compete with other sectors. My sort of first and sort of you know, most pointed piece of advice to startup founders is learn to recruit, learn how to be a recruiter for yourself. And I do quite a lot of training to startup founders on this. But, you know, one thing that sort of really comes across to me is, you know, they know their technical skills. They often become quite skilled and well trained at how to, you know, pitch for money and all that sort of stuff. They get a lot of training around marketing, but they don't learn how to recruit in a systematic and proper way. And it is a skill set. And if you do it right, it goes better. You know, use recruitment tools. You know, the first question I ask every company that I mentor around this is, you know, what tools do you use to help yourself with recruitment? And if I hear Google Docs and I hear my inbox, that's a red flag to me. And I get straight onto them about that. There are plenty of really cheap, excellent, easy to use, easy to implement tools that are not only will make your process more efficient and more effective, they'll also teach you how to recruit because they enforce a process, one that you don't have to think through yourself. So I'm a big fan of that. You know, put proper recruitment systems in place. The concept of an employment brand, and I think Rowan was whether deliberately or inadvertently doing this, she was clearly stating her employment brand when she was talking about how much she values the people and all that sort of stuff. You know, employment brand is usually a combination of, when people think, why would I work for this company? They think of it around, you know, three major sort of areas. Is this a really interesting project? Is this a product I like, or service that I'm really buying into? Is what I do going to matter? You know, am I actually going to be doing something impactful? But then the third component is, you know, who am I going to be working for, and who am I going to be working with? What's the team? Because everyone likes to work in a team that's highly functional and motivated, cohesive, and sharing. I think there's very few people who don't fit into that category. So yeah, you need to understand and recognize your employment brand, and then you need to promote it. You know, it's a marketing exercise. And one thing I say to startup founders is, quite often the very first time you go to the public market is when you recruit. You know, it's the first time you go out and present yourself to the world, and you've got to get the messaging right. Otherwise, no one's just going to be interested. And that flows on to other things like how well you look after your candidates as they come through the process. So you may have 50 applicants and you may hire one, but that's 49 people who are going to be rejected by you. And you better make sure that you do that well. Because if you don't, that's 49 people that are going to say bad things about you in what is almost inevitably a very tight market. Another skill set that I actually think starters should learn is they should learn how to headhunt. They should learn, I mean, headhunt is an emotive word. Reach out to people, maybe is the better way to describe it. But this notion that you can rely on advertising is a very antiquated one in this day and age. If you have specific skills that you need to bring into your business, you need to go out and look for them. You know, at any given time, only 20% of the potential market is actually looking for a job. They're not even looking at your ad. And usually the best people are not looking for a job anyway, because they're happy and functional and successful where they are. So you really need to sort of take that leap and actually reach out to people. I just mentored a team in Portugal, so a small team, just raised Series A. We put together their recruitment systems and we advertised, and 3 jobs went well and 2 went really badly. So I said, you're just going to have to hit LinkedIn and reach out to people. And they had a real lack of comfort around that. It was definitely outside their comfort zone, but we put a process together, they did it, and they managed to fill those jobs by reaching out to people. And those were key electrical engineering jobs. They were key to their business plan. So if you're a founder and you're not doing that kind of thing, then you are, you know, undermining all your success for the future. You know, the point about inspiration being really key rather than money is a really important one. And I'll come back to Rowan's point about the retention piece. My contribution to that argument is to say to people that they actually need to learn how to manage and motivate and inspire people. It's not something that necessarily comes naturally to everyone. So you need to take the time and develop those skills. Otherwise, you'll lose people. And finally,
I'm sorry, John.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So okay, sorry, because I want to give Stephan the time to answer the last question. Sorry for that. No worries. No, because it's very interesting and we have a short time. So I will go straight to.
And then Anaïs, we have two interesting questions from the audience that we can then ask after Stephan makes recommendations.
Great. Thank you so much. Okay, so Stephan, from the great investments you have made all over your career, I'm sure, what would you say are the key talent strategy for companies to grow? Or how do you advise? You touched it upon a little bit before, but you have some key pieces of advice.
So I'll try to condense it. And one thing I mentioned before is the diversity and the ability to identify the talent or the competencies that you need as you grow your company, and this require a certain the management of the company should be aware of this, and I completely agree with both Rowan and John. Obviously, you have to sell yourself, and the competition for talent is fierce. So startup companies, they have a lot to offer, but they also have to be aware that all the candidates have many other options. So the good companies, the successful companies, they build a good culture. I also like that word. And one of the many privileges as an investor is working closely with companies. Each little company is almost like its own family, right? And some, I don't know if you mix sort of family and business, but there is a certain culture, there's a certain atmosphere in every little startup, and some families are dysfunctional, and you can sort of sense this, and it can be very difficult to repair. It can be very often it's just not one parameter, but it may be on several levels, and that dysfunction can actually kill a company. So I think it is important that there is a good entrepreneurial, inclusive, get stuff done, compatible culture, and that sort of that core is probably carried by a few key people, very often obviously founders and CEOs, but not necessarily only those people. And the successful companies are able to retain and build on that, and that will also help when attracting new talent, that they will see that this is a company where they can really get stuff done, and where there is a recognition of the talent and what they're bringing into the mix to get the company developed. So yeah, I think I will end here, and then happy to. There were a few questions we hear, so if we should give the audience a chance to ask a few things, then also happy to answer those.
Great, thank you very much,
Thank you,
Stephan.
Anaïs.
So clear.
Yeah, so I have two questions, one from Patricia, and I would like to thank Patricia for being the first one to open the round of questions, because it's not easy to be the first one. And I think it may be one for you, John. Do you think it is an option for startups to choose for candidates with less experience in order to battle the shortage? You know, it is difficult to expect candidates to be trained, and maybe we could think about training on the job instead of looking for candidates with more and more expertise. And we have about 4 minutes for the two questions.
Okay. Well, I'll keep it short. So in the same way that Rowan pointed out that culture trumps strategy for breakfast, I would say attitude trump experience any day of the week. I think it's just a really core adage in recruitment and hiring people. Your person who has less experience may come from behind. If they've got a better attitude, they will supersede their experienced but less motivated employee every time. So I think looking outside the box and taking a risk on people who just have the right attitude, the right cultural fit is always a good idea. So.
Great. And I think one that I would give to you, Stephan, because it touches on the idea of teams that you mentioned. Do you see cultural and language gap as a potential issue for getting the right talent for the healthcare startups? And the Petri says that, today we're connecting from multiple countries, we have multiple nationalities, but I think in the health field, it is still a lot, there's still a lot to do to educate companies to understand the importance of having multicultural teams.
Well, so my perspective is from biotech, big and small biotech, but nevertheless relatively small organizations. And already before the pandemic, things could be pretty virtual. Even before the pandemic, for instance, I remember one company I invested in, there were 8 people in 5 or 6 different countries. I'm not saying it's optimal, but it does happen when you have to engage with talent wherever that talent may be. This has been taken to the new level under the pandemic. We've all been sitting in front of our computer and looking at each other on computer screens. I think you'd still, and it works amazingly well. We've all done investments, we've done recruitments, everything virtually. But and so we've surprisingly been able to deal with this. Imagine if it had happened 20 years ago, it would have been a different experience. But there is something with the last 2%, the face-to-face interaction, and that's also where the sort of cultural antenna. I think it's a very individual thing. It's there are just some people who are better at it than others, and yes, we could probably all be better, but I think it is the biotech and the life science industry, I think, has always been pretty good at dealing with different cultural backgrounds. That's at least my experience. I may be wrong, but and I certainly won't exclude things could be optimized, of course. But I think it is an international industry.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot. I think this ends the first roundtable. So I would like to really thank all of the panelists. So thank you, Anaïs, for moderating. Thank you, John. Thank you, Stephan. Thank you, Rowan, for sharing your insights.